mother's whispers. I had always found solace in the quietude of our old family home, a place where childhood memories danced in the dust motes of sunlit rooms. But lately, the silence seemed to be filled with a presence, an unsettling whisper that slithered through the cracks of my serenity. It started as a faint murmur, a trickling doubt that I was ever alone. The voice was unmistakable, my mother's, calling me, beckoning me to the basement with a tone that oscillated between desperation and warmth. Each night, the voice grew louder, more insistent. "Come down, join me," it pleaded, threading through the creaks of the aging floorboards. I resisted, attributing the sounds to the grief of losing her just months ago. But the human mind can only rationalize so much before curiosity claws its way to the forefront. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of dying embers, I found myself standing before the basement door, hand trembling on the knob. The descent was like stepping into another world. The air grew colder, heavier, as if saturated with unspoken secrets. The darkness seemed to breathe, pulsing against the feeble light of my flashlight. There, in the void, her voice was clearer, suffused with an emotion I couldn't place. "I'm here," it whispered, a siren's call from the shadows. The scent of decay wrapped around me, a tangible reminder of the emptiness that awaited. I called out, "Mom?" My voice faltered, devoured by the silence that followed. The beam of my flashlight cut through the darkness, revealing nothing but the remnants of a life once lived. Old furniture draped in white sheets, boxes of forgotten belongings, and a rocking chair, moving ever so slightly, as if just vacated. The air stilled, and for a moment, I thought I saw a figure, a wisp of something ethereal, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. The whispers grew frantic now, a cacophony of pleas that seemed to come from the very walls. "Don't leave me," they cried, and I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. Something moved in the periphery of my vision, a shadow that flitted between the realms of the seen and unseen. My heart raced, pounding a rhythm of primal fear as I realized that the voice, though achingly familiar, was not my mother's. It was a mimicry, a malevolent echo that knew just how to lure me into the depths of despair. The realization hit me like a physical blow, and I stumbled backward, the flashlight slipping from my grasp. In the ensuing darkness, I heard it, a soft, guttural growl that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Panic seized me, and I turned to flee, but the stairs were no longer there. Instead, there was only the gaping maw of an endless abyss, and the voice, my mother's voice, laughing as I fell. The fall felt eternal, a descent into madness where time lost its meaning and the darkness consumed all hope. When I finally landed, it was not with the bone-crushing finality I expected, but a soft thud on a cold, dirt floor. Disoriented, I scrambled to my feet, the darkness around me so complete it felt like a physical entity, pressing against my skin, filling my lungs with its icy breath. Where am I? The question was a mere whisper, but it boomed in the silence, bouncing off unseen walls. There was no answer, only the echo of my own voice, distorted and strange. I fumbled in the dark, searching for my lost flashlight, but my hands found something else, something warm, pulsating, and slick. I recoiled in horror, the realization dawning on me that I was not alone. The air shifted, and I sensed movement, a slithering, creeping motion that made my skin crawl. "Who's there?" I demanded, my voice cracking with fear. Silence, then a soft, mocking chuckle that seemed to come from right beside me. "You shouldn't have come," it hissed, a voice that was both my mother's and not, a twisted doppelganger of comfort turned sinister. I stumbled blindly, my hands outstretched, seeking an escape from the voice and the unseen presence that stalked me. The ground beneath me was uneven, littered with objects that crunched and squelched underfoot. I didn't dare imagine what they were. The scent of decay was stronger here, a cloying, wet smell that spoke of rot and forgotten things. Then, a light, a faint, flickering glow in the distance. I moved towards it, driven by a desperate hope that it might lead me out of this nightmare. But as I drew closer, the light revealed itself to be not an exit, but a tableau of horror. Figures stood in the dimness, mannequins posed in a grotesque imitation of life, their faces twisted in silent screams. And among them, a chair, its back to me, rocking gently as if occupied. I approached, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm. The chair turned, and I saw her, my mother, or the thing that wore her face. Her eyes were hollow, black pits that seemed to stare into my very soul. "Join me," she crooned, her voice a serpentine caress that filled the room. I wanted to run, to scream, but my body betrayed me, moving closer of its own accord. Her hands reached out, fingers elongated and claw-like, beckoning me to embrace the darkness with her. I was inches away when I saw it, the truth in those abyssal eyes, the malevolence that lurked within. This was no loving reunion, it was a trap, a snare set by something ancient and evil. With a surge of willpower, I broke free from its spell, turning to flee once more. But the mannequins blocked my path, their once still forms now animated with a life that was not their own. They moved towards me, a legion of the damned, their hands outstretched, grasping. I was surrounded, the voice of my not mother laughing as the hands closed in, pulling me into the darkness. The hands were cold, their touch like tendrils of ice wrapping around my limbs, pulling me deeper into the abyss. I fought against them with every fiber of my being, but they were relentless, unyielding. The darkness was alive with their whispers, a symphony of despair that promised an end to all things. "You cannot leave," they hissed, "you belong to us now." In a desperate bid for freedom, I lashed out, my fists connecting with the brittle bodies of the mannequins. They shattered under the force, but for each one that fell, two more took its place. The air was thick with the dust of decay, choking me, blinding me. I could feel the presence of the entity that had lured me here, a malevolent force that fed on fear and sorrow. It was then that I remembered the locket, the one my mother had given me, which I wore around my neck. It was said to be a family heirloom, a talisman passed down through generations. With trembling hands, I clutched it, feeling its warmth against my skin. The whispers grew louder, angrier, as if the locket was an anathema to them. I held it high, and to my astonishment, the locket began to glow with a soft, golden light. The shadows recoiled, their forms dissolving at its touch. A path cleared before me, leading to a distant, flickering light. I ran, the locket my beacon in the darkness, the mannequins crumbling to dust in my wake. The light grew brighter, and I could see it now, the basement stairs, leading back to the world of the living. I ascended, the darkness clawing at my heels, the voice of the entity a fading scream of rage. I burst through the basement door, the locket's light extinguishing as I collapsed on the floor, gasping for breath, the morning sun streaming through the windows. But the respite was short-lived. As I lay there, the locket grew hot, searing my flesh. I ripped it from my neck, watching in horror as it melted into a pool of liquid shadow. From the puddle rose a figure, my mother's form, but twisted, her features a mockery of the woman I loved. "You cannot escape," she intoned, her voice a death knell. "You are bound to us, to this house, forever." I backed away, my mind reeling. The house was no longer a sanctuary, it was a prison, and I was the latest in a long line of souls trapped within its walls. The figure advanced, and I knew that this was the true face of the horror that had haunted me. I was left with a choice, succumb to the darkness or fight for my very soul. The figure smiled, a grotesque imitation of affection, as it reached out with shadowy arms. "Come to me, my child," it whispered, and the house echoed with the laughter of the damned. Hey! Subscribe for more scary stories. Story 2. Lost Laughter. I had always sensed something peculiar about the old Victorian house we moved into. Its walls whispered secrets, and the air felt heavy with untold stories. It wasn't until a lazy Sunday afternoon, when boredom drove me to explore the depths of our new home, that I stumbled upon a hidden door in the basement. Behind it lay a room, untouched by time, filled with dusty old toys and faded photographs. The dim light revealed a chilling sight. Every toy seemed to mirror the likeness of a child who had vanished from our town over the years. The first photograph I picked up was of a boy with a crooked smile, holding a wooden soldier. The same soldier sat on the shelf, its paint chipped, eyes staring blankly ahead. A chill ran down my spine as I realized the connection. I delved deeper, uncovering more toys, each a replica of the missing children. Dolls with glassy eyes, tin trains, and soft teddy bears all seemed to watch me, their presence a silent accusation. As night fell, the room grew colder, and the shadows seemed to dance along the walls. I heard faint giggles echoing off the stone, a sound so out of place it made my heart race. The toys appeared almost alive in the flickering candlelight, and I couldn't shake the feeling that they were not just mere playthings but vessels containing the souls of the lost children. The laughter grew louder, and the room spun. I stumbled, knocking over a row of dolls. They hit the ground with a thud, and the room fell silent. Too silent. I held my breath, listening, when suddenly, a single doll began to rock back and forth. Its eyes, once dull, now gleamed with a sinister light. "We've been waiting for you," it whispered in a voice that was not its own. Panic seized me, and I ran for the door, but it slammed shut with a force that shook the room. I was trapped, the darkness closing in, the whispers of the children growing more insistent. "Play with us," they murmured, "stay with us forever." The toys began to move on their own, inching closer, their expressions twisted into grotesque smiles. I pressed my back against the door, my mind racing for an escape. But then, the room fell silent once more, and a new figure emerged from the shadows. It was the boy from the photograph, his crooked smile now menacing. "You found our playroom," he said, his voice a mix of delight and malice. "Now, you're one of us." The door behind me vanished, leaving a solid wall. There was no way out. The boy's laughter filled the room, a sound that would haunt me forever. I was part of the forgotten playroom now, another toy in the collection. The room had no windows, no doors, only the suffocating darkness and the eerie glow of the toys. The boy, the one who had welcomed me into this macabre playroom, stood there, his eyes hollow, yet filled with a malevolent intelligence. His name, he said, was Elijah, and he had been missing for decades. "Why am I here?" I asked, my voice trembling. "What do you want from me?" Elijah's laughter echoed off the walls. "We're bound by the same fate," he said. "The room chooses its guests, those who stumble upon its secrets. You see, we're the forgotten ones, the children who vanished without a trace. But we're not lost, we're trapped." I glanced at the other toys, the girl with the porcelain face, the wooden horse with splintered hooves, the music box that played a haunting melody. Each held a piece of someone's soul, a fragment of their existence. And now, I was part of this spectral collection. Elijah beckoned me toward the music box. "Listen," he said. "Hear the tune? It's the same one that lured us here. The melody that binds us to this room." I hesitated, but curiosity won over fear. As I turned the rusty crank, the notes filled the air, a mournful waltz that seemed to seep into my bones. Memories flooded my mind, a swing set in an overgrown backyard, laughter, and then darkness. I remembered nothing else, just the sensation of falling into oblivion. "Every toy," Elijah whispered, "holds a piece of our past. The girl's porcelain face hides her tears, the horse remembers galloping through moonlit fields. In the music box," he trailed off, his eyes distant. "The music box remembers the night we vanished." "But why?" I asked. "Why are we here?" Elijah's gaze bore into mine. "To remember," he said. "To unravel the mystery of our disappearance. Only then can we break free." I studied the faded photographs, the missing children, their smiles frozen in time. "How?" I whispered. "Through you," Elijah replied. "You're the key. The room chose you because you're connected to our world. Find the truth, and we'll all be released." The music box played louder, its notes frantic. Shadows danced on the walls, and I felt their desperation. The room pulsed with energy, and I knew I had to uncover the secrets, the hidden threads that tied us together. As I stepped closer to the girl with the porcelain face, her eyes flickered. "Remember," she whispered. "Remember." And then, darkness swallowed me whole. I awoke in a place that defied logic, a twisted maze of memories and shadows. The girl with the porcelain face stood beside me, her eyes hollow yet pleading. "Remember," she whispered, her voice like a distant echo. "Remember why you're here. The room had shifted. The music box lay shattered, its melody silenced. The wooden horse now galloped in place, its splintered hooves pounding against the floor. And Elijah, the boy who had welcomed me, was nowhere to be found. I traced the faded photographs, each child's face etched into my mind. Their laughter, their innocence, it haunted me. But one image stood out, a girl with braided hair, her eyes wide with fear. Lena, the girl who had vanished on a moonless night, leaving behind only a broken swing set. Why? I asked the porcelain girl. Why did we disappear? She tilted her head, and her porcelain lips moved soundlessly. The room feeds on memories, she said. It thrives on our pain, our longing. We're its sustenance. But what's the purpose? I pressed. Why trap us here? Her gaze shifted to the wooden horse. To break the cycle, she whispered. Each child who enters becomes a part of the room, their essence woven into the toys. But you're different. You can unravel the threads. I remembered the swing set, the creaking chains, and Lena's laughter. She had been my childhood friend, and her disappearance had haunted me for years. Now, I understood. I was the key to unlocking the room's secrets. The porcelain girl led me to a hidden alcove. There, a dusty mirror hung on the wall. As I stared into its depths, my reflection wavered, revealing glimpses of other lost souls. Speak their names, she instructed. Release them. I closed my eyes, summoning memories. Lena, I whispered. Elijah. All the children who vanished. The mirror trembled, and the room quaked. Shadows danced, and the wooden horse reared, its eyes blazing. The girl's porcelain face cracked, revealing raw emotion. You must choose, she said. Break the pact or become one of us. The choice weighed heavy. To break the pact meant freeing the lost children, but at what cost? Would I lose myself in the process? Or would I remain a toy, a vessel for their memories? As the room tightened its grip, I glimpsed Elijah's face in the fractured mirror. His eyes pleaded, and I knew he wanted release. But Lena's laughter echoed, and the swing set swung in the darkness. I stepped toward the mirror, my voice trembling. I choose, I said. I choose to remember. The room convulsed, and the walls cracked. The porcelain girl crumbled, her essence merging with the shadows. The wooden horse collapsed, and the music box's shards glowed. And then, the room shattered. I woke up in my bed, sunlight streaming through the window. The old Victorian house stood silent, its secrets buried deep. But I remembered it all. Lena's laughter. Elijah's plea. The forgotten playroom. And as I stepped outside, I knew I would never forget. Story 3. Faceless Visitor. Every night, the scratching begins as the clock chimes 12. It starts softly, like the timid approach of a curious animal, but grows more desperate with each passing minute. I lie in bed, the covers pulled up to my chin, my heart racing with a mix of fear and anticipation. The sound is always the same, a persistent, nails-on-glass scraping that seems to beg for entry. I've tried to ignore it, to convince myself it's just a tree branch or some nocturnal creature. But deep down, I know it's neither. The scratching is too deliberate, too human. And then there's the reflection, a faceless figure that stands behind me whenever I muster the courage to peer outside. It's always there, just out of sight, its presence felt but never fully revealed. The first time I saw it, I screamed. I remember turning around, expecting to confront an intruder, but there was nothing. Just the empty room and the pale moonlight casting shadows that seemed to mock my terror. Since then, I've tried to catch a glimpse of it, to prove to myself I'm not going mad. But it's clever, always slipping away the moment I turn. My friends say it's stress, a figment of my overworked imagination. They don't hear the scratching. They don't see the figure. To them, it's all just stories. But I know it's real. I can feel its eyes on me, cold and unblinking. It wants something from me, but I don't know what. Tonight, I've decided to confront it. As the scratching starts, I don't move. I don't even breathe. I wait until the sound is almost unbearable, then I leap from my bed and rush to the window. But as my hand reaches for the curtain, I hesitate. What if it's not just a reflection this time? What if it's waiting for me to reveal myself? I pull back the curtain with a swift motion, and there it is, the glass, the night, but no sign of claws or branches. Just as I start to sigh with relief, I feel it, a cold breath on my neck, a whisper in my ear that sends chills down my spine. I whirl around, but again, there's nothing there. Or so it seems until I notice the window. It's open, just a crack, but enough to make me question everything. The open window is a silent invitation, a breach in my sanctuary. I close it quickly, my hands trembling. The room feels colder now, the shadows darker. I can't shake the feeling of being watched, of being hunted. It's as if the figure has moved from the reflection into my reality, an unseen stalker lurking just beyond my senses. I decide to search the house, to reassure myself that I'm alone. As I move from room to room, the silence is oppressive, broken only by the sound of my own footsteps and the erratic beating of my heart. The familiar spaces seem alien, transformed by fear into a maze of potential hiding places for whatever haunts me. In the living room, the moonlight casts an eerie glow through the sheer curtains, creating patterns that dance across the walls. It's here that I hear it again, the whisper. It's faint, like a secret being shared by ghosts. I strain to listen, but the words are elusive, slipping away as I try to grasp them. I return to my bedroom, the sense of dread growing with each step. The scratching has stopped, but the silence that's taken its place is even more terrifying. I know I won't sleep tonight. I know I'll be listening for sounds that shouldn't be there, for whispers that aren't meant for the living. As I sit on the edge of my bed, a picture frame catches my eye. It's an old photo of me, but there's something wrong. My face, it's blurred, as if smudged by an unseen hand. And behind me, barely visible in the background, is the outline of a figure. It's the same one from the reflection, I'm sure of it. I try to convince myself it's a trick of the light, a flaw in the film. But then I see it, the same figure, in every photo in the room. Always there, always watching. How had I never noticed it before? Is it possible it's been with me all this time? The realization hits me like a physical blow. I'm not alone. I've never been alone. And as the night deepens, I can feel it drawing closer, its whispers growing louder. It's waiting for something, biding its time. And I can't help but wonder, what will happen when the clock strikes 12 again? The night is alive with a haunting stillness as the clock's hands inch toward midnight. I can feel the weight of the unseen gaze, the pressure of the unknown pressing against the walls of my room. The air is thick with anticipation, and I find myself holding my breath, waiting for the inevitable scratching to begin. But tonight, the sound doesn't come. Instead, there's a new noise, a low, guttural growl that seems to emanate from everywhere and nowhere. It's a sound that doesn't belong to this world, a sound that freezes my blood and roots me to the spot. I want to run, to escape, but my feet are leaden, my body unresponsive. The growl intensifies, and with it comes a new terror. The walls of my room begin to warp and bend, the corners stretching into infinity. The moonlight that once offered a semblance of comfort now twists into grotesque shapes, casting long, reaching shadows that claw at the edges of my sanity. I'm trapped in a nightmare, but my eyes are wide open. The figure, the faceless entity that has haunted me, is no longer just a reflection. It's here, in the room with me, its presence a palpable force that sucks the air from my lungs. I can't see it, but I can feel it moving closer, its breath a fetid wind that whispers of death. In a moment of desperate courage, I reach out to where I sense it stands. My hand meets resistance, a surface cold and smooth like glass. It's the window, but it's not just a window anymore. It's a portal, a gateway between my world and the abyss that this creature calls home. The growl ceases abruptly, replaced by a silence that is somehow louder than any noise. And then, a voice, clear and chilling, speaks directly into my mind. "You are mine," it says, and I know it's true. I've been marked, chosen by something ancient and malevolent. As the clock strikes 12, the room snaps back to normalcy, the shadows retreating, the walls solid once more. But the terror remains, a seed planted deep within me. I know that when the sun sets again, the scratching will return, more insistent than ever. And one night, perhaps tonight, the window will open, and I will be unable to close it. The faceless figure will come for me, and I will have no choice but to follow it into the darkness. The end. Subscribe for more. Thank you.